Covers the Lakers for the LA Times. Dan Woike, we bring him in a lot at this time of the year. Covered the Clippers, Chargers, Angels, USC. Good weekend for USC. Bronny James now a Trojan. That is a big story. College basketball, UCLA is sort of the historic program. USC football, UCLA basketball. We'll get to that in a second, though. So, I was saying if you go look at the history of the playoffs, whatever player, it could be Duncan, a Shaq, it could have been LeBron in his prime, or Steph during the dynasty. Whatever player forces the most change, usually that team has a force that it's a force multiplier. He makes everybody better. I would argue Anthony Davis, everything the Warriors are doing is to combat his size and dominance. It's not Steph. And it's like historically, if you have the player where we have to make the most adjustments, I find the Warriors adjusting on the offensive end, on the defensive end. Does that signal the Lakers are going to win the series?
It's a good question because I think like one of the best arguments for Steph Curry's sort of all-time place, whether it's a Mount Rushmore or a list or wherever you have him, is that in my time in the league, in my time even watching basketball, I can't think of a player who forced change the way Steph Curry forced change, right? Where it's like, you want to play defense at 20 feet? No, now you have to play it at 30, right? And he's going to stretch you in ways that defenses had never really been stretched before. In this series, but that happened in 2014, 2015. I mean, teams now have adjusted to this. You see it on the regular. You don't see guys like Anthony Davis and his ability to do two things, Colin. One, the rim protection has been outstanding in the playoffs, right? Like he did it against Memphis. That really set the tone for how the Lakers were going to defend in the playoffs. They were going to funnel things at AD, and he was going to defend without fouling, and he was going to turn away shots, right? I think 26 blocks in that series, which is a silly number for 6 games. And then, the Warriors, though, are going to try to pull him away from the basket. And I thought the thing that I noticed in Game 3 was, his rim protection was outstanding. It's been great, and he didn't foul. But, like, he got his hands into passing lanes. And, like, what Golden State tries to do, they get so much credit for the three-point shot. But the second part of their offense is they create these little 18-foot fast breaks with Draymond Green where you go 4-on-3 and you're able to kind of get layups off of that. And they did that all through Game 2. And AD disrupted that pocket pass, that the ability to get the ball into that position right around the free throw line to kind of lead to those little 4-on-3s, 3-on-2s. And that, to me, was the second level of his defense. I wasn't sure he'd be able to control the game from 19, 20, 21 feet away from the rim the way he did in the Memphis series. And in Game 3, he did. And that's why, I think even a bad night for AD offensively has usually been coupled by a pretty good defensive night. I would anticipate tonight the Warriors will adjust again, and they will try to move him around more and try to limit his ability to disrupt that stuff. But, I mean, he's been really adaptable throughout the playoffs, and he's usually figured it out.
LeBron didn't have a bucket in the first quarter. I was talking to somebody.
Didn't take a shot.
Mm-hmm. My takeaway is with LeBron that the schedule's not ideal. 1 day's rest for every game. And so I think the Lakers need to make hay earlier in this series. I think the Warriors play more good players. Kuminga's not playing, but they can go into the reservoir of DiVincenzo, Poole. Now it's JaMychal Green. They can go like 8, 9 guys they kind of trust. LeBron's now, do you think over the course of the series he'll become more or less effective based on a bad schedule for him at this age?
I think, in the past, LeBron James would have to win his team playoff games. Over the course of a series, you might have to win 3 games where you play otherworldly, right? I think right now LeBron trusts this team enough that he can just win quarters. And it's, transitioning almost like from a starting pitcher who throws 103, for 8 innings to a guy who comes in it and can throw just 2 innings of dominance, like he's becoming Mariano Rivera in spots in the game and trying to pick his places. I mean, I think, he's a guy, this is like kind of a nerdy thing, but like the tracking data suggests, right, like that on the Lakers, he has been the guy who's moved the slowest miles per hour on defense in this series. If you watch that chase down, though, where he tips, where he stops the
crowd,
he's not the slowest player on the court. He runs down Andrew Wiggins and makes a crazy athletic momentum play at home. And I think he's picking his spots more effectively in this series. And I think this is stuff he got to see He sat out for 5 weeks. Thankfully the LeBron James defeat was able to get him back onto the court. But he watched the Lakers and how they were playing without him, and I think he saw they could be effective with the ball in Austin Reeves' hands. Saw the shot making that D'Angelo Russell could bring to the table. Saw how AD could dominate, and I think he's been able to pick his spots and be a little more conservative with the way he exerts his energy. And we'll see as the series goes on. We'll see if they get to a game 7 or a game 6 at home where he has to really, really play 44 minutes and score 40 points. We'll see if he has that in his tank. I think sort of part of the reason why they've been successful at this point is he's really only needed in the second half of the second quarter to score 9 points in a 3-minute stretch, and he's been able to do that, I think, a little more effectively.
I said I don't think either one's a championship team. I think the Warriors are too reliant offensively on Steph, and I do believe when they lose eventually in the playoffs, they will look for more front court scoring. They've gotten lopsided. Plus, they have multiple guards. They can move Peyton again, Jordan Poole. They've got a lot of guards. They're guard heavy, front court light. When you look at them, if they lost, do you see this organization, Golden State, our reigning 8-9-year dynasty, making a big move or a series, Dan, of subtle moves?
I mean, there's been a lot of talk about what the future looks like for the Warriors. Bob Myers' situation up there, is he a guy that is going to stay with the organization? Is he going to look for a new challenge? Draymond Green's free agency. There are things sort of at play here. They have given a lot of money to Jordan Poole to be an important player for them. He has not produced in the playoffs, at least in this series thus far, the way that they kind of you would want to get from a guy who's making $25 million. The hard part with finding them, you don't want to change too drastically because your identity is your identity. And even though Steph Curry is 35 years old, he is still as efficient, still as game-changing of a player.
Yes.
We've seen great games from Klay Thompson in this playoff series. Not the same defensive player that he used to be. I mean, ideally, the guy that they have that you could try to get more from is Andrew Wiggins, right? He's in-house.
But, boy, everybody needs wing defenders.
And Wiggins has been a good defensive player, I think, in the playoffs. The issue is just more, again, this was a guy who missed a big chunk of basketball on his way into the playoffs. And it's hard to be really, really aggressive when you're on the court with Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson. The ball in the anytime anybody else shoots, it's sort of a bad decision because you want Steph to shoot, you want Klay to shoot, and so those players need to be empowered. And I think that's been sort of the secret sauce for Golden State through this is everybody has felt empowered. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got a big Wiggins game in this series, but to me, he would be the guy that you would say it's in-house, maybe we can funnel that up. But they've got some interesting young pieces they could maybe move.
Yeah.
It's just hard to find some 22-point a game, 6'9" guy. Everybody's looking for those guys,
right? And
a lot of teams have more to offer.
What do you expect tonight?
I think Golden State will look different. I don't know if they'll change the starting lineup. They may. I think they will attack with Steph Curry very differently. I think they won't let just Austin Reeves guard him. I think they will move him through off the ball stuff more. I think that'll be a big thing. They'll look for him to be a little more aggressive and less of a kind of a playmaker. I'm curious to see what the Lakers do, if they can kind of get ahead of the game a little bit with an adjustment. They've been a very good reactive team. Their game plans have been really good. I think Darvin Ham has answered some critics around the league about his ability to set up the right game plans. There are sort of some lingering questions about in-game adjustments. You look at the big quarters that John Morant has had against the Lakers, right? That would be an example of, can he turn the faucet off? Can the staff turn the faucet off once it gets going? But look, John Morant has big quarters against a lot of teams.
Right.
It's not an easy thing to do. And I think, I'll be curious to see if they can identify what Golden State is trying to do differently. And to your point, figure out, okay, if we do this, AD can dominate again. I think that'll be sort of the game within the game tonight.
Suns Nuggets, I think you should just send out a fine for Jokić and the owner. We've got outrage everywhere. This didn't rise to anything other than intense playoff game. You're not supposed to go into the crowd. He wanted the ball. It wasn't a violent fan. It was one of those where I think you call this new owner and say, hey, we saw Mark Cuban do this years ago when he bought a team. Settle down. You go to Jokić and say, hey, stay out of there even though you wanted the ball. Get out of the crowd. You levy heavy fines, and that's it. That's where I fall. How about you?
I don't think it's a suspension. I think if you do kind of view it granular, like if you look at like the little pieces of it, it does look bad. I mean, you do have a player running into the crowd to swipe the ball from a fan, like in itself, and then pushing somebody. And oh no, like that also happens to be, your league's new owner. If you view it solely that way, it looks bad. But I think cooler heads will prevail. I just don't think you want to be in a situation where a guy is suspended. He's too good of a player. The series has been too enjoyable. Keep the focus on the basketball. Keep the focus on what he's done. Keep the focus on what Devin Booker's done. Not on, some extracurricular stuff.
Okay, you've covered everything in L.A. Bronny to USC. What did you make of it?
I think it is an immense opportunity for him as a kind of budding star from a business standpoint. Yeah. Right? Like, we've already seen him in commercials. This is a guy I think who's done like 2 interviews or something like that ever. It's been a very controlled environment that will be able to be even further controlled and here in LA, but massive opportunity. I think USC has done a pretty good job attracting these kinds of big time star one-off recruits.
They won the national championship beach volleyball. They got Bronny. They had a huge recruiting weekend football. What they've done is they really go out and get kind of the mega star recruit. Yep. That's kind of what they've become. Basketball.
Yeah, that was the tentpole too of the Carroll era, right? Was that it wasn't just that come to USC, wear the cardinal gold and play the fight song. It was come to practice and Snoop will be there. Yeah. Or I covered a USC practice once where Will Ferrell lit himself on fire and ran out from behind the field goal posts, or a stuntman pretending to be Will Ferrell, right? Like, that was sort of the vibe. And, it is you do have more tradition at UCLA and stuff, but, USC is much more like, come here, be a star, we want this. Our
business school will groove you into greatness.
That's right. Exactly right. And then, by the way, 20 years from now, we'll hit up your dad for a building, and the new practice facility will be named after him.
All right, Sixers, Celtics, who you got?
I think Boston, although I think they've got some on-the-job learning to do. They did not handle late-game situations very well there.
Fourth or overtime.
Yeah, the Jaylen Brown double, just kind of a baffling mistake. And then, I get the timeout, no timeout discourse. I think I
wouldn't have called one because I believe Warriors, Celtics, the way they're constituted over the last 5 years, those teams do not need to call a timeout. Memphis, the Lakers just got thrown together. I would never call a timeout with the Warriors. I want to give Darvin Ham a defensive shift. I want to catch the Lakers off guard. Boston should be Smart, Horford, Brown, Tatum. You guys have been playing together. Why do you want to call timeout?
I think it was an awareness issue. They just didn't go fast enough. It was a time and score thing. You hear coaches talk about that all the time. They weren't down 3. They weren't down 2. They were down 1. So you want to give yourself time to miss, especially if you don't use your timeout, because then you can give yourself the opportunity to try to drop a play for a 3 after 2 free throws after you foul with 4 seconds to go or 3 seconds to go. You can extend the game that way.
I always thought you take a shot with 4 seconds left. If you miss, you get a second shot.
Well, that's part of it too, but the ability to foul there, I think, is what coaches and scouts would tell you, is that if you don't score with 4 seconds to go or 5 seconds to go, then you wrap up whoever gets the rebound. You assume they'll make both free throws, right? And then now you're down 3 and you have your timeout and you can advance the ball to midcourt. You can drop a play. That's sort of the argument for it. Sort of the worst thing you can do in that situation is not call timeout and run the clock to the buzzer and then not get a shot off. It really is sort of a worst case scenario in triplicate.
They always say in football, the great coaches, half of practice is situational coaching.
Sure.
In the NBA, by game 20, cardio is fine. Can we just get down to situational basketball? And Boston had all these guys for years. Of their weaknesses, that shouldn't be one.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, though. I mean, right? Like, I mean, this is why Milwaukee, I mean, this happened in Milwaukee.
All those old guys.
You know what I mean? Got a team that had been together, and somewhere Grayson Allen is still Euro stepping, like trying to get a shot off. And I think that is, it's just, that's sort of the beauty of the playoffs to me in the NBA. And when you're in the arena, you feel it is like just the pressure gets ratcheted up so much that it makes you do kind of stupid things sometimes.
Yep.
It really, I mean, look, as much as everything that happened in Game 3 and how great Anthony Davis was, the Warriors did a bunch of not smart stuff. Yeah. Like they threw the ball all over the court, and a lot of that has to do with environment, and they've been through everything.
Yeah,
and it's just
they still get sloppy,
and they still get sloppy, and I think that is like one of those things. So I get the argument again for trusting your players. You don't want the Philly defense to set up, but when you move that slow, the defense does get set up, and they were able to get into rotations, and sort of, to me, it was an urgency issue.
Dan Woike, great stuff. Lakers-Warriors tonight, Game 4, must win, obviously, for the Warriors. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.